Okay, so before we get to the review of episode 7, I have some Percy Jackson news. So, first off, for those of you who are fans of the books, book 7 is supposed to come out sometime in September, and I started reading the description, but then I realized that they're so far into the future that there's really no point. I only got to the point of he's looking for a second letter of recommendation for college. And his second letter of recommendation is supposed to come from Hecate, who is, of course, he's going to have to do a quest because that's the point of these books, is for Percy to go on a quest a la Hercules. So that's number one. So, speaking of the book, the author is the executive producer of the show. So, a lot of people I've been reading on Percy Jackson TV subreddit are piling on the hate for him. But he has declared that he understands why people are upset. He knows he's screwed up this season, and he's hoping that that there's a second season, if there's a season 2, that he can correct. He can course correct with how he went about doing this series. Now, normally, I don't know, maybe Disney was making him make this in small chunks, the episodes, or he did the opposite of J.K. Rowling, because J.K. Rowling is a very good writer, not a very good human being, but a very good writer, and she, when given the opportunity to write a screenplay, got into the weeds because, world building. Authors have that ability to write these long books that go into minute detail, which TV shows and movies doesn't work so well in. So maybe he saw that criticism and went the opposite way, or Disney had something to do with it. But regardless, he said he wants to do better if there's a second season. Which leads me to my last bit of news. So, the streaming numbers for the first couple of episodes of Percy Jackson are out, and it's ranked 4th among originals. Now, first off, that's a good thing. I'm hoping that despite all the absolute hate it's getting, that at least that means people are watching. So hopefully that will allow for a second season. But why are the streaming numbers so far behind? I mean, Nielsen ratings for regular TV comes out weekly. Why do we have to wait a good month to get the numbers for the first 2 episodes of this show? We are on episode 7. I mean, I do not understand. You would think that because it's streaming, because you watch it on an app, even if it's on a smart TV, you're still watching it on the app, that there would be more control over how many minutes of a show is watched, because that's how they do it with streaming. It's not, this episode had so many viewers or whatever. It's how many minutes are watched, which again I find bizarre, because not all people watch the credits. I certainly skipped the introduction, where it's either the credits or it's the previously on part, because I know my memory sucks and it's getting worse. My memory isn't that bad. I remember what happened on this show. The show isn't that complicated. So people don't always watch the same amount of minutes. You know, if this episode was, I think, like 47 minutes, 40 something minutes, including the previously on to the end credits. Not everybody watches the previously on or the end credits. You know, I did watch it through the snippets of what's going to happen next week, but I don't otherwise watch the credits. I look where that starts, I click on it, watch that, and then I leave. I don't watch the credits. So does that work against the ratings? I just don't understand how the ratings work. It's just bizarre to me. But anyway, so with that out of the way, let's get to the review of this episode. So I thought it was going to start off with a dream seer type situation like what Percy has been dealing with. And no, and I was waiting during this entire opening scene when he was going to wake up, but he never did. So he walks into this, well, furniture store, and Procrustes comes and tries to sell him a bed. He becomes less thrilled when he sees it's Percy, but he still tries to get him to lie on one of the beds, which it's obvious that that's not a good idea, and Percy knows it because he's not an idiot. But my question is, how did they get there? I mean, at least when they went to the Lotus Casino, you saw how they got there. Hell, even if they hadn't mentioned how he got there, at least you knew the name. Because Aries said you need to go to the Lotus Casino and see Hermes. So you knew, you had that information. I'm not sure, did I miss it? Did I miss them saying that this is where they had to go? How did they know to go to this furniture store and that it was Procrustes? We don't know. I'm sure it says in the books. Because this is the problem with all TV series. They have to cut out some of the stuff in the books because otherwise the show, movie, whatever, would be way too long because it gets into the minutia that TV shows and movies can't get into, like I mentioned earlier. But at least something, anything. How did we get here? So, unbeknownst to me, Annabeth was there. And so Procrustes is trying to get Percy to lie on one of the beds, trying to entice him. And of course, the one he picks is a waterbed, which I'm sure has something to do with him being the son of Poseidon. Percy, that is. And Percy's like, you know what? Great idea. Why don't you demonstrate? And so he ends up getting caught in his own trap. Because Annabeth pushed him, wearing her hat of invisibility. So Grover then peeks in, asks if it's safe to come in. And they walk to where they think is the entrance to the underworld. Procrustes tells them that nobody's ever come back, which That is literally not true that nobody's ever come back. I mean, even the Greek myths talk about how it is possible to come back from the underworld. Now, granted, it's rare and there are conditions, but they manage. So, anyway, so they go down and they have these pearls, which is weird because the way it's supposed to work is you give Charon a coin and he escorts you to Tartarus. And this is where everything goes south. First, Sweet Grover. He mentions how bad the smell is, and I at first thought when Annabeth gave him this squeaky toy that it smelled nice, and that reminded me of my brother when we had to use an outhouse. He just couldn't handle the smell, so my mom gave him a stick of juicy fruit gum to put under his nose so he could use the outhouse without gagging. Anyway, but no, it was just a squeaky toy. It was just something for him to play with so he could feel calm. Okay. So they go to the underworld, and I'll admit it doesn't look like what I imagined it would be. Maybe it's been a long time since I've read the myths to know what Hades looks like, to know what the underworld looks like, but okay. So they first find a group that Charon is ferrying to Tartarus. Okay, fine. So they're basically cutting in line, and Percy even said this feels so wrong because, he's a good kid. He doesn't want to cut in line. But they cut in line because they want to cross the river Styx so they could get to Hades' palace. Now, problem with that. That takes you to Tartarus. But then again, they're 12. They probably don't know that Hades' palace is not exactly the same as where these souls go. But anyway. So Cerberus attacks them. And they get away. Well, Annabeth and Percy get away. Grover gets eaten. So I knew that when Percy gave each one of them a pearl before they went in, that something bad was going to happen. And I was right. So Annabeth, because she has a dog, she used to have a dog, hopped up on one of the stirrups and was vigorously petting him so he would fall asleep. And because he fell asleep, Grover was able to get out from his mouth. And that's when he realizes he lost his pearl. Okay. So thus begins everybody tries to sacrifice themselves for everybody else. Grover says that, he's going to be stuck here, you and Annabeth and your mom won't be able to get out. And Percy's like, gives him his pearl. And because again, Percy wants to sacrifice himself. This time for his mother. and of course his friends. So they're really, I think, trying to hit home that the prophecy is not about Grover or Annabeth, that neither one of them are going to be doing um, what's the word that the oracle used? Betrayal. So, that they're not going to turn on him. So they're going through and they end up in some forest, which again, I don't know if this is something that Reardon created himself for the underworld, or if I just completely forgot that that's a thing. Because, like I said, I haven't read the Greek myths in a long, long time. Probably I last read the myths before anybody who read those books even knew those books, even before those books existed. I don't it's been a long time since I've read the myths. Anyway, so it turns out that there's a bunch of souls that are literally stuck to the ground, that they have taken up roots. Annabeth explains that this is for people who are held down by their own regret. And all of a sudden, one of the roots takes a hold of Annabeth. And Grover asks, what are you regretting? And that's never actually answered, I don't think. I don't think it's ever answered what she regrets. I don't know if they wanted to imply that she was going to be the one to betray them, or if there was something else that we just aren't aware of. So, Grover and Percy go off. Annabeth says, I'll hold them off, just go. And so they go off, and then you see a bolt. I thought I saw a bolt of lightning, actually. I really thought I did. But, suddenly they look like they're in a desert. And all of a sudden, the shoes go completely Looney Tunes. And it tries to drive Grover into the pit of Tartarus. And Percy, I was yelling at my screen for Percy to do this, to take out his sword and use the sword to anchor himself. And what does he do? Exactly that. So he's able to hold on to Grover long enough for the shoes to literally fly off his feet, well, his hooves, and go into the pit of Tartarus. So now, these are enchanted shoes. So the only two people now these were Luke's shoes. So either Hermes or Luke had something to do with this, because I doubt the shoes would have done this otherwise. Now, Hermes did try to prevent them from going to the underworld to begin with. Now, again, I don't think he had bad intentions. I don't think he wants a war. I think it was more of he doesn't want the kids to get hurt. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe Hermes did have something. And so then, for some reason, maybe that's when I saw the lightning, Percy opens up his bag, the bag that Ares gave him, and he finds the Master Bolt. And Grover and Percy are like, what the hell? How did this get in my bag? Wait, it's Ares' bag. Ares gave it to me. So now they know Ares was the one who stole the Master Bolt. But there's still the small matter of rescuing Percy's mom. So they manage to get to Hades' palace, and Hades offers them food and drink. Grover, being the not very bright person that he is, was going to say yes to something. Percy stopped him because he's all business. But I'm sure Percy also did that to prevent, because I don't know how many stories that his mother told him, but I would be surprised if she did tell him the tale of Persephone. And for those who don't know, this was a myth to for the Greeks to explain seasons. The reason the winter is so many months is because while she was kidnapped by Hades and she stayed with him, she made the mistake. This was after she was rescued, and she was happy about being rescued. She had a few pomegranate seeds. So suddenly her happiness was muted by the fact that she had to stay in Hades for as many months as pomegranate seeds she had. And I think it was like 3, 4, which anybody from the Midwest would laugh that anybody would think that winter only lasts 3, 4 months. That is funny. But anyway, so maybe that was part of the reason why Percy was all business, was not just because he wanted to get his mom and, take the Master Bolt back to Zeus. It was also the fact that he was literally saving Grover from having spent any time in Hades. And so first Percy is appalled at his mother because she looks like a gold statue. And he's like, what have you done to her? And he's like, saved her life? I mean, being crushed by a minotaur is not a reversible condition. Which, fair. But she is a gold statue right now. So, now Percy, this is where things start to get really strange. So Percy assumes that Ares stole the Master Bolt for him to take to Hades because they're in cahoots. And Hades like, I have absolutely no idea what the hell you're talking about. I do not give a rat's ass about what my brothers do. If they want to start a little war, fine. I want nothing to do with them. That's why I stay right here where, things are relatively sane. So he has no idea what Percy's talking about with the Master Bolt. And Percy has no idea that his Helm of Darkness was taken. So he wants his helm back, which, I mean, from the very beginning, he sent his Furies to get Percy and they would keep calling him a thief. So, I realize that he's 12, but just maybe, at first, you would think it was because of the Master Bolt, but what if he wanted the Master Bolt for himself? Why would he accuse Percy of stealing it? So, at this point, you should probably realize that no, he doesn't want the Master Bolt, but so he wants his Helm of Darkness. Percy, of course, doesn't have it because, well, he never took it. So, Percy starts to think. While Grover and Hades are talking, and he realizes, now this is where things get weird. he doesn't figure out that Hades is accusing him of stealing something, because he's been accusing him since the very beginning. But he does figure out that Kronos, a being who should be torn to pieces and completely dead in Tartarus, somehow has something to do with it. Why isn't he like, wait, the shoes went crazy when we were by the pit of Tartarus. These shoes belonged to Luke and was given to him by Hermes. But neither of those two names are even considered. It's just Kronos. And Percy even said, I thought I heard your voice, but it's obviously not your voice that I was hearing. So, now let me back up before we continue, because flashbacks. So we see the bit more of the flashback that we saw when Hermes made Percy see a time where you hurt someone you love, which is that he didn't want to go to school, didn't want to go to this one of the many schools that she tried to get him into, and he locked the door. So his mom couldn't get in, which, okay. What year is this supposed to be exactly? So, then we see them in a restaurant. Well, actually, no. First we see her talking to the dean, and he wants nothing to do with Percy because he thinks that Percy has psychological issues because he saw a winged horse following him. So, while they're at this restaurant, and Percy is asking, why are you trying to get rid of me? Now, I realize that upset her, but couldn't she say, I'm not trying to get rid of you? Couldn't she say that I'm just, trying to find a good school for you that would cater to your needs? I mean, she did tell him before that she's looking for schools that have the resources to help him learn, but she should have at least reminded him when he said, why are you trying to get rid of me, that she's not. She didn't give him a reason to not think that. But anyway, she goes to pay. So while she's crying, she suddenly puts a match inside a sundae glass. And we finally meet Poseidon. So she mentioned she wants him to go to Camp Half-Blood, but she also doesn't want him to turn out like all the others. She wants him to be better than that. And so Poseidon's like, yeah, I guess you've answered your question. I mean, this is going to be hard on both of you, but you have to send him to the school. Now, at this point, we don't know if this is some other school or it's finally the school where we saw him as when the series picked up, which is with Chiron and with Grover, because I would assume that Poseidon would know that that would be the school to send him to. But he promised that once he accepts who he is, that he will be by his side. And so we see him. Let me back up a little. So Percy said to Hades, because Hades at first said, you, your mom, and Grover can stay. Well, he said the goat can stay, and I'll give you sanctuary, because if Kronos is truly doing what you say he's going to do, then you're going to need then you're going to need safety because, well, Kronos is coming after you. So, but Percy decides that no, he's going to get him his dark helm back. And that then he will give him his mom. So he throws the pearl, so does Grover, and they end up what looks like a beach. And this is where there's the voiceover of Poseidon saying that once Percy accepts himself and knows the truth, that he will always be by his side. And we see Annabeth there. How the hell did Annabeth get out? I mean, granted, this is Hades. He is a god, so he can decide what souls he's going to keep and which ones he's going to eject, but how? And so then we see Ares coming towards them. Now, does Percy have his bag at this point? Because Hades, after a while, was like, oh, if Kronos is coming for us, I'm going to need that Master Bolt, so I'll take it after all. So, I assume that Percy has his bag with him. But anyway, it looks like Percy and Ares are going to fight, and it looks like they're by a body of water. We don't know which one, but at this point it does not matter. We know that Percy is hella strong when he's by a body of water. Now, the question becomes, is he going to fight Ares by himself, or is he going to get a little help from Dad? But anyway, that is how the episode ended. And we see bits and pieces of next week's episode, which I don't know. It doesn't look like it's in order because the last glimpse that we see is Percy looking like he's about to fight Ares. Whereas, obviously, that would be the first one because that's exactly what Ares seems to be doing at the end of this episode. And we hear Chiron saying that you're no longer just a demigod, you're no longer just a hero, you're the leader of the Half-Bloods. They've accepted you as their leader. The fact that he killed a Minotaur on his first try should have kind of clued everybody in, but okay. So, that seems to be all I have for this episode. I believe I covered everything. But yeah, I'm really, really curious how the heck Annabeth got out. Because Hades never mentioned Annabeth. He never said anything about how he's going to release her too or give her sanctuary. So maybe that was just cut out. I don't know. But, so now we have one episode left for Percy to get a hold of the Dark Helm and return the Master Bolt to Zeus, which he seems to do. Well, that's one of the clips we see. I'd like to see Zeus, and he puts out the Master Bolt and says, and no, I don't have an appointment. So, yeah, so again, I think they've jumbled everything up. It started from how it ends and goes to how the episode begins. Which is an interesting choice, but okay. So, yeah. And, oh yes, and about the Luke thing, I'm more thinking that Luke had something to do with the shoes sending them to Tartarus into the pit, because the oracle did say a person you call friend will betray you. Luke is someone he calls a friend. His shoes were the ones who tried to drag them into Tartarus. So prophecy fulfilled. But yeah, Yeah, he figures out Chronos, but he doesn't think that, oh, Luke gave me those shoes and it tried to take us to Tartarus. Maybe Luke has something to do with this. But anyway, so now I think I've truly covered this episode, and I will see you guys in the next one.